We're joined now by Andy Mock from Beijing. He's a senior research fellow at the Center for China and Globalization. Andy, this year's theme, obviously, about the internet, the digital economy. I started thinking about my last trip to China and how, it's really a cashless, cardless society. It seems like society has just really embraced this digital economy. Can you talk to us about that embrace? Why do you think that is?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on, Mike. I completely agree with you that China is at the leading edge of the digital economy, whether that's e-commerce, whether that's digital payments, an increasing number of other fields. But one thing I think it's also important to emphasize that we see a lot of these changes. What's less visible is this idea that just because you can doesn't mean you should, in that China also has recognized that these new technologies, whether we're talking about 5G, AI, are empowering, but they're also potentially very dangerous, like earlier technologies like electricity and automobiles. So it's not only about pushing the technological envelope, being able to do things, but also being wise and judicious about how to do them or what to do. And I think we're seeing a very balanced approach in China today that is leading the world in many important technologies and applications, but also rapidly advancing on the policy and regulatory front.
So pushing forward, but being cautious about it. But talk to us about how the pandemic changed things. If it did, it seems though, in many ways, China was better positioned for the pandemic because of the fact that people weren't walking around with money or credit cards. They were able to adapt with the apps in their phone.
Absolutely. So I think one of the big issues is that China had what I would call a second mover advantage in going online. So the first mover, many people first went online in places like the United States on PCs, but in China it was mobile first. And what that allowed were things like digital payments, as well as a lot of delivery services. And it was this digital infrastructure that I think enabled China and its people to weather the COVID-19 crisis. So if you were locked down at home or wherever you were, and you weren't able to go out and move around and conduct your daily life, as long as you had a smartphone, you could order food, you could order clothing, appliances, you could entertain yourself playing games, etc. So I think that was very, very important that this infrastructure was built and sustained, and that the pandemic actually accelerated this change, as we heard earlier, that something like a third of China's output is now digital, and that's only likely to grow.
So it's fueling a new economy in China. Where do you see it going? And can you talk about, we hear so much about income inequality. Now there's talk about digital inequality. How do you square that?
Sure, and that's an important question, not just in China, but globally, this digital divide and how do you bridge it. So I think one of the ways, of course, is that the more people that can get online, they'll have access to information, and that can be very important for, say, farmers in rural areas that might have access to crop price information or better techniques about how to grow crops more successfully, more productively, sell them at better prices, etc. But I think one of the very, very important developments we might see is around this notion of financial inclusion, and where we're seeing convergence, that if you can get online, you can also access financial services. And one of the key ways this is happening, and again, I think where China is leading, is in what's called DCEP, digital currency electronic payment, or the digital yuan. And by doing this, what this does is this removes a lot of the friction, a lot of the cost to being banked, meaning having access to a financial system. And in China today, that still is a challenge or an opportunity for more people to access financial services. But especially in places like Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, there are literally billions of people still awaiting inclusion.
Yeah. Andy, always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us and offering your insights. Appreciate it.